Nintendo has released a lot of games for the NSO over the years, including some games that nobody asked for. Games that many people didn't know even existed up until they were added. And there are still a lot of games we wish they would add. So in this video, I will be sharing with you 10 obscure, not very well known games that I think would make great additions for NSO that not many people are asking for. Of course, this list will not include popular games that are already in high demand that everybody's asking for, like Donkey Kong 64, Super Smash Bros., or even Banjo-Tooie. The games I'm talking about will be lesser known games that you've probably heard about, or maybe you even grew up with, or games that you didn't even know existed up until now. Let's get started. Number 10. Bomberman 64. This is one of those N64 games that I grew up with that I thought looked very colorful and vibrant, so I picked it up. And that's how I was introduced to Bomberman. Even after looking at every other N64 game, there's just something about Bomberman 64 that sticks out for me. Bomberman 64 looks very unique to me. It doesn't play like other N64 games. Even the sequel looks very different. It taught me how Bomberman games worked before I eventually found out about the classic grid format Bomberman is known for. Some levels require you to do some serious puzzle solving involving bombs and jumping off of bombs to get to where you need to go. And it took me years to get all 100 gold cards and find the final world, as well as figure out everything in this game. But I'll never forget that morning before school when I finally got all 100 gold cards by defeating Altair in stage 4 with 5 gold cards. I couldn't wait to get back home from school that day. I was very excited to play the secret final world until I found out how hard it was. It may be small, but it's the only world where bomb jumping is mandatory to beat it. The game's multiplayer battle mode is also unique. It doesn't play like a traditional Bomberman game. It doesn't have the grid format or bombs exploding in a cross, and the ability to customize your Bomberman with costume parts you find in adventure mode is pretty cool. It not only provides a great incentive to play the single player mode, but it also makes your Bomberman look cool, and even sound cool. It's worth mentioning that this game was developed by Hudson, the same people who developed the Mario Party games. I think this game would make a great addition to the NSO library considering what else we already have. Number 9. Bomberman 64 The Second Attack. Unlike its predecessor, this game plays a little differently and is also more story-driven, where all the characters in it have a lot more to say than they did in the first game. This game also has a money system where you can collect money to buy stuff in the shop within the one-player game. You can buy things like costumes, extra health, movies, and even video guides on how to beat some of the mid-bosses. Even the game's battle mode has a single-player campaign where you're supposed to defeat computer-controlled players in order to unlock more different kinds of battle modes. Bomberman is also accompanied by this cute character named Pommy, who is either computer controlled or a second player can even step in to play as Pommy while Bomberman is doing the levels. Imagine being able to do this with an online friend on NSO. Wouldn't that be great? You can also collect food throughout the level to evolve Pommy to make him stronger than before. It's very similar to Pokemon Evolution, and there's a chart of possibilities. The game also has a callback to the classic grid style with how some of the bombs explode in a cross again, and the first stage in battle mode is also a grid even though the overall game doesn't play like the classic games do. It's also very annoying how in the single player campaign the enemies each have their own HP bars, and also you have to defeat all the enemies in a room to progress, which is even more annoying considering you have to wait for your bombs to explode. And it's also especially annoying with how the mid-bosses and the final rooms in each planet disable your remote control. And I like having remote control, but it's still enjoyable nonetheless. Overall, this would be a great game to have on Nintendo Switch Online alongside the original Bomberman 64. Number 8. Bomberman Hero. Yes, I'm aware this is the third Bomberman game on this list, but you gotta admit, Bomberman was a very good franchise at the time, back before Konami got their dirty hands on it. Bomberman Hero is the only platforming Bomberman game. It is the only game of its kind. There is no other Bomberman game like this. Bomberman can jump on his own without needing to jump off of a bomb like he did in 64 and its sequel. I do wish they had come out with a sequel to this game so that they could tap more into the potential of the idea of a Bomberman platformer. But even though they didn't do more with this, at least we're happy to have this one. And just like the previous two games, it will be great to have this one on NSO as well. Number 7. Chameleon Twist. One of the most unique platforming games to ever exist. The idea of using your character's tongue to get around most of the time is awesome. You can even use it to swallow enemies like in a Kirby game. And then you can spit those enemies back out at other enemies. There's also a multiplayer mode. If we ever got this game on NSO, we could enjoy the multiplayer mode as well. Now, of course, this game does have its own share of flaws, like the seriously wasted potential that wasn't exploited until the sequel. Plus, this game could have done a whole lot more in terms of collectibles. As a matter of fact, the Japanese version of this game did a whole lot more, to the effect of adding power-ups in the main adventure mode, and even adding black and white chameleon characters, and even a mode where you have to be perfect, even if it is extremely hard. The game also doesn't have much of a story, but that's okay, I don't think it needs one. It's worth mentioning that Desert Land and the first half of Jungle Land are the only levels that take place outside. Every other part of the game takes place inside with rooms for you to have to clear. Now, even if we do get this game on NSO, it'll probably just be the US version, which feels less complete than the Japanese version. But even so, it's a very unique type of game nonetheless. Just like Iggy's Wreckin' Balls, this bizarre, weird game would make a great addition to the NSO library. Number 6. Chameleon Twist 2. Yeah, I don't blame you if you expected the next game on this list to be the sequel to Chameleon Twist. The first game had a lot of potential, and the second game takes advantage of that potential by giving us all these new moves and all these colorful new worlds that, might I remind you, take place outside. Most of them anyway. Oh, and when I was looking at the gameplay of this game for Iceland, it reminded me a lot of Bomberman Hero's gameplay. At one point, in a way, this game felt a lot like Bomberman Hero in terms of the way it looks and its graphics. As a matter of fact, the final boss to Chameleon Twist 2 looks an awful lot like the third boss from Bomberman Hero. The characters in the game also look very different from their Chameleon Twist 1 counterparts. This is because for Western releases, they wanted the characters to look more like real chameleons. But I like their original designs better. In fact, the Japanese version even kept their original designs. Once again, the Japanese version of the game is better than the American version. If Chameleon Twist 1 and 2 do end up on NSO, the Japanese are gonna get the better end of the deal. And they already have Mother 3 on NSO. While as of this video, the West still doesn't have it in any legal way, shape, or form. Despite these shortcomings, this colorful game and its predecessor would still make great additions to the NSO library. Number 5. Mario Party Advance. Yes, not all games on this list are N64 games. And yeah, before you complain, I'm very well aware that this is labeled as the worst Mario Party game, if not the worst Mario game there is. And I don't blame you guys for that, considering how the overall game is tailored towards a single player, and even the multiplayer aspects boil down to just dual minigames, a few multiplayer things here and there. But hear me out! I still think this game deserves a place in the NSO library. Even though it's not very good, the single player mode where you're traveling around the board, playing mini-games, meeting all these unique characters, I am of course talking about Shroom City. That feels like its own RPG. That is the kind of potential I wish other Mario Party games like Mario Party Superstars and Super Mario Party Jamboree would have. The amount of world building and unique characters in this mode solidifies this mode as its own RPG. Even though it's not what Mario Party fans ask for, it's what Mario RPG fans would ask for. Sure, it takes all its minigame music from that of existing Mario Party games. Really. And yes, the final minigame representing the final boss was underwhelming, but I would still come back to Mario Party Advance at least for its very diverse, very unique, very RPG-like single-player mode. And as someone who's never played this game online with people, the online mode is worth a try at least. But for the most part, it's really the RPG-styled single-player mode that I like most. As underwhelming as this game is, whether you disagree with me or not, I still think this game deserves a spot on the NSO library. Number 4. Glover! Oh man, even though this game isn't very popular, I was still impressed when I discovered it. I love how colorful it is, how weird it is, how unique it is. And I was even more excited when I played it for the first time too. It is definitely not like other games on the market. You take on the role of a glove character named Glover, and you have to carry the ball with you all the way to the goal in each level. I learned early on from playing the game and from watching Nitro Red's review of the game that even though carrying that ball with you all the time seems like a burden, the ball is actually an extension of the character. It allows you to go places you can't normally go. And I will admit that the camera needs work like in a lot of games, not to mention how easy it is to lose the ball in many levels. Seriously, it breaks my heart to see the little guy cry over his ball like that. It's also nice to know Hasbro made this game before they became a toy company. You score points by collecting these things called gerbs. Yeah, that's actually what they're called. A few points if you collect them one at a time. More points if you collect them consecutively. Even more points if you collect them with your ball. Speaking of your ball, you can transform your ball into 4 different types of balls to help you get around more. There's the bowling ball, which is heavy and sinks in water and you can use it to destroy stuff. The ball bearing, which sinks in water and is much lighter. The crystal ball gets you twice as many points but is very fragile and breaks easily. You have to be very careful with it. The game also has a very simple story around it. Maybe too simple, but the point is you have to get the ball across each world in order to get it back to the castle. The green crystal was actually each ball's original form, and Glover transforms them before they break in the story at the beginning of the game. It's a shame that this game didn't get a sequel because honestly I think it deserves one considering how much fun it is. Actually, this game was gonna have a sequel but they never finished it. This game was also available for PlayStation 1 and was ported to Steam in 2022. Nitro Red went into great detail in his video about why the N64 version of the game is the best version of the game. The game may be hard to master at first, but once people do master it, it can be a very challenging but a very fun game to play with what it brings to the table. I would really appreciate it if Nintendo were to bring this game to Nintendo Switch Online, really. Or maybe it'll be available separately on the Switch eShop. Guess we'll have to wait and see. Number 3. LEGO Racers. I'll be the first to admit LEGO Racers isn't the best N64 game on the market when there are so many better racing games on the N64 like Diddy Kong Racing and Mario Kart 64. But that doesn't mean LEGO Racers doesn't hold a special place with me given that it's one of the games that I grew up with. On the surface, it's just another racing game with power-ups, but unlike other racing games, as LEGO is, you're allowed to build your own car. There's also some skill involved with regards to getting the power-ups you want. Like Diddy Kong Racing, the power-ups are divided into certain colors. And unlike Diddy Kong Racing, you improve your power-up by gathering these white bricks called Power Plus bricks. And anybody who's familiar with LEGO Racers can tell you that the green power-up at its full power is the best one, allowing you to warp straight ahead on the track, like skipping your opponents entirely. Something you can especially do for the time trial mode. Now the PC and PlayStation versions of this game are much better given the N64's limitations, and maybe the only reason I'm putting this game here on the list is because of how very underrated this game is. Even with the current direction LEGO games are going in general, let's see if this game can't get a spot on NSO. Oh, who am I kidding? It only supports up to 2 players. Number 2! Ridge Racer 64. One of the most underrated, overlooked games on the N64. Even though the Ridge Racer franchise is mainly on the PlayStation, one game did make it onto the N64. This game is not like Diddy Kong Racing or Mario Kart 64. This game isn't go-karts with power-ups. This is good, old-fashioned race car driving the way that it should be. No stupid blue shells to mess you up. When I was little and I had been playing games like Mario 64 and Bomberman, my dad said he wanted me to play a really cool game for the N64, like one with a cool car on it, and I went with Ridge Racer 64. That's how it ended up being one of the games I grew up with. The game has a limited number of racetracks, including some we've never seen in any other Ridge Racer game, but it does have a nice selection of cars to choose from. The Golden Grand Prix is simple. You start at the very back, and from there all you have to do is go for the lead, which is first place. This means you have to beat a whole bunch of cars that don't even appear on the map that get a head start in the race. Once you clear a stage, you can challenge the other cars to a race, and if you beat them, you win these cars. As you progress through Grand Prix, you'll need better and better cars to take on the harder races. There are, of course, even a few secret cars that you can unlock. The game doesn't tell you how to unlock them, but you can look them up online. The best car in the game, the one that appears on the cover of the game, is called the Ultra 64, which is named after the original name for the N64. I always found this game quite challenging when I was a kid, but I did manage to get through most of it when I was a kid. It's the game's oval course, which is all about speed, really. The game also has a multiplayer mode, which I feel would be great for the NSO. As someone who enjoys playing through this game, I would enjoy having this game on the NSO library, and I would also enjoy playing with my friends online in this game's multiplayer mode. If we can get games on the NSO library that we've never even heard of until they get added, who says they can't add Ridge Racer 64 sometime in the future? And now, the number one game on this list that nobody is asking for is Super Bomberman! What better way to introduce the Bomberman franchise to the Nintendo Switch Online library than with Super Bomberman? They could give us the original NES version too while they're at it. I am of course talking about one of the classic Bomberman games, made by Hudson, not Konami! I'm talking about the Bomberman that gamers from the 80s and 90s grew up with. I will give Konami credit for not ruining Bomberman in terms of gameplay, but they did ruin Bomberman in terms of characters and world building. But I digress. I consider Super Bomberman to be the flagship game with regards to the classic Bomberman series, the original grid format that we've all come to love and know over the years. Like so many other classic Bomberman games, this game has a multiplayer mode, and its single player mode consists of taking down enemies, getting power-ups, finding the exits, and it also has boss battles. There are 6 worlds, 8 stages per world, the last stage on each world being a boss fight. Also, the 5th world is like a mini boss rush mode instead of a normal world. That's nice. The final boss during the second phase has to be defeated by punching bombs and making sure they hit the boss, which is floating in the air. It breaks the norm of having to destroy every other boss with bomb explosions. I like that. It made the final boss of the game really unique. This game would make an amazing addition to the NSO library along with its sequels, some of which, like Mother 3, were never released in the USA. Super Bomberman 3 was released in Japan, in Europe, but not in the USA because Hudson Soft USA closed around that time. And its story is also continued by Bomberman Hero, an N64 game that was released in the USA. The fact that Power Bomberman exists shows how much we yearn for the classic Bomberman style and not this crap! I don't know if Konami will allow classic Bomberman to be on the NSO library, but I think Nintendo should just buy the Bomberman franchise away from Konami. My point is, Super Bomberman and its sequels would be amazing additions to the NSO library. Before I end this video, I would briefly like to mention that Shantae was originally going to be number 1 on this list. But Shantae is not as underrated as I thought. In fact, it's already available on the Nintendo Switch eShop. It's available independently of the NSO library, and you don't even need an NSO subscription for it. It even has the same save state system that the NSO library games have. While I don't like the idea that your GBA enhanced save file within the game is separate from your GBC file, it's still an amazing game, and kudos to WayForward for getting every one of its Shantae games up to this point on the Nintendo Switch eShop. I look forward to seeing how Nintendo will expand its NSO library in the future. Do you agree or disagree with any of the games on this list? Any thoughts, comments, or facts you'd like to share? Please do so in the comments below, and thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more videos, and happy gaming!